Hello everybody, my name is Stern, and today I am bringing to you 5 creepy Reddit stories from r/ask Reddit. They're not gonna be really overly scary or disturbing, but there's some interesting stuff in here that I thought would be nice to share with everybody. Also, sorry if I sound tired, I'm running off of like 4 hours of sleep. Anyway, let's just hop straight into it. This story was posted under the thread, "What's a genuinely scary thing you've encountered that still haunts you to this day?" I'm not superstitious by any means. I don't believe in paranormal stuff or creatures like Bigfoot, etc. But this one I legitimately cannot explain. I grew up in northern Minnesota, and I used to explore the woods all around our house basically every day. One fall day when I was 12, my golden retriever and I went on our usual adventures way back in the woods. We had walked pretty deep into the forest when suddenly my dog stopped in her tracks and did the deepest guttural growl I have ever heard her make. I followed her stare, and about 50 feet away was a jet black creature, bigger than a wolf, smaller than a black bear. We had lots of those around. I'd seen them often, and this was not a bear. It bolted away from us slightly at an angle, and it moved faster than any animal I've ever seen. And it had no gait, it just moved. I don't know how to explain it. It was so fast I couldn't make out any defining features, just this black, shapeless thing. It disappeared over a hill, and my dog whimpered and dragged me in the opposite direction, which was not like her at all. We booked it back home. I was terrified. 2 weeks later, I saw it again, this time outside my house in the bushes, on the opposite side of the road, and it took off as quickly as I'd seen it. I have spent endless hours researching what it could be, from animals to native legends to everything imaginable, and I have no answer. It still freaks me out so much. And then a commenter underneath this story posted, "If you'd like a rabbit hole, look into Dogman encounters. I saw something very similar to you. And while I know I also didn't see a bear, I have no idea what the fuck I did see." I'll put some pictures of Dogman on screen now, what he's alleged to look like. It actually looks very interesting, and I would not be opposed to something that looks like this, or very similar to this, living in the woods. There's also some images that just straight up look like a bear, so maybe it is just a bear that people are confusing to be a dog man, but yeah. Let's move on to the next story. This story, under the same thread, goes like this. This happened when I was younger, but my dad saw it as well, and we both still talk about it today, as it was really the only thing either of us had experienced as paranormal in our lives. Was in maybe 5th or 6th grade, and had taken an overnight field trip to Colonial Williamsburg, a kind of historic town thing where a whole American colonial era town is set up, blacksmiths, bakers, and whatnot. Everyone who lived there also worked there as an actor. Getting back to the point though, we were riding in the tour bus into town, and maybe a block or two away we saw a reenactment of a hanging going on at the gallows set up in town. There was a handful of period-appropriately dressed folks gathered around, and high up hanging on the noose was another actor with a white sheet/bag obscuring his face. Definitely wasn't a dummy, because we could see the guy squirming and struggling on the rope, legs tied at the ankles, kicking and arms jerking despite being tied behind his back. We couldn't see any kind of harness or anything holding him up. It looked like he was actually being hung. It was wild to see that in a place that's mostly set up for like field trips. It was brutal. Curious about how they set up a safe hanging like that, my dad asked the tour guide what kind of harness or safety setup they had for the guy being hung. The tour guide just kind of looked at him oddly and was like, "We don't do hanging reenactments. The gallows are just for display." As soon as he said that, I got one of those spook chills that runs up your back and arms. I looked through the bus's rear window towards the gallows we had just passed, and it was totally deserted. Not a single person there. No observers, no struggling hangman, no rope. My dad said he experienced much of the same. To this day, I, as well as my dad, swear up and down that we saw a man being hung and a group of people gathered around watching it. But when we looked back, it was gone. I'm not a big believer in ghosts or the supernatural, but that experience has stuck with me for decades since. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this story. It very well could be made up, but I don't know. I feel like I'm inclined to believe this guy. This seems like a believable story. I didn't have this in the original voiceover, but I think my thought process at the time was it was sort of a mass hysteria situation, but not mass, just with two people, which is very possible. Like talking to each other about it, they could have made up the same thing in their head. But yeah, again, let me know what you guys think down below. But let's just move on to the third story. This story, under the thread Reddit, what is the most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story, is by a deleted user from over a decade ago. And the story goes a little bit like this. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see in a lot of movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass behind some bushes to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past me. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound. It was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out, because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car. But why would it return almost an hour after it had left me the previous time? The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car. But why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate? Fuck that, I thought to myself. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a fucking car parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side open. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, hey you, get the fuck out of your car, now. I noped the fuck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story? Don't fucking sleep on the side of a deserted road. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that story. I thought it was very interesting. If that happened to me, I probably would not be able to sleep for weeks. The hook killer he was talking about apparently is an urban legend, but I will leave the link to the Wikipedia article for the hook in the description. So yeah, let's move on to the fourth story. This story was posted under the thread, what's something creepy that has happened to you that you still occasionally think about to this day? When I was around 23 years old, I was on a bike ride and stopped at a park to use a restroom. While I was in the stall, a balding middle-aged man suddenly stuck his head up over the wall and looked down at me. When he saw me looking back up at him, he looked startled, like he was expecting to see someone else, and immediately got back down and left. I finished up quickly because I thought something weird was going on, and I had left my bike sitting unlocked outside the restroom door. When I got back out, my bike was still there, but standing right outside the bathroom door was a 12 or 13-year-old boy who I'd never seen before, who looked right at me and struck up a conversation about my bike. Just pointless small talk. I looked around and saw the creepy old guy still milling about in the parking lot, watching us talk. I was barely saying anything, basically just going, yeah? Huh? Okay. But the kid kept talking to me until the creepy guy gave up and got back in his car and drove off. As soon as the guy's car was out of sight, the kid said something to the effect of, thanks, bye, then waved and walked away. All the comments underneath the Reddit thread are talking about how the guy saved that kid from potentially something horrible being done to him by that creepy bald guy. And yeah, that was probably a very scary situation for that kid. I hope he's doing alright now. Final story coming up right now. The final story is under the thread, Redditors who work at remote places like forest officers, oil rig workers, etc. What creepy things have you noticed while at work? I'm a little late to this thread, but I hope it doesn't get buried because this story still haunts me. I worked as the county historic preservationist in southern Appalachia, working on the buildings and properties the county owned. One of the benefits included with my job was living on site at one of the historic properties. The historic house was an imposing brick mansion built in the 1810s, and I lived in a small caretaker's house about 20 feet away. This was in the backwoods, so to deter trespassing and vandalism, the county had built an 8-foot tall fence around the entire 5-acre parcel and put barbed wire on top of the fence. I mention this all just to show it was basically impossible for anyone or anything to jump or climb over the fence onto the property. One night, after working late at another property, I pulled up to my entrance gate, let myself in, locked it behind me, and then drove the 100 yards down the gravel road to my house. There were no lights on the property, so I could only see by my headlights. As I turned my car around the corner of one of the outbuildings and parked it, my lights shone on a thing that I still have a hard time describing effectively. It was the size of a deer, but with long, spindly legs and long, shaggy hair, almost like a taller maned wolf, if you've ever seen pictures of one of those. That alone shook me, as there was no way something of that size should have been able to get through or over my fencing. What followed is absolutely true. I got out of my car to get a better look at what the hell this thing was, and as I opened my door and got out, the thing took off running away. Not on 4 legs, but on 2. I literally watched this thing raise its back up, stand at full height on its back legs, and sprint away. I absolutely freaked out at that point, grabbed my mag light and my shotgun from inside, and tried to find the thing again. There was no trace. No tracks or anything. I have no idea how it got in or out of my property. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just sat on my couch with my shotgun, watching the front door, hoping that whatever I saw didn't come back and burst in. I cannot explain what the hell I saw that night, but it still raises the hair on my neck every time I think about it. And yeah, that was all of the stories that I've got for you tonight. Let me know what you think about them down in the comments below. I will respond to every single comment on this video. Join my Discord down in the description. I hope you all have a great night. Bye-bye.